Welcome to East Coast DNA. I'm going to have to go back and do a quick calculation. I think I might be at like a 30% ratio of returning guests for 2025. So hopefully
Right.
people recognize you here. But welcome. Thank you for joining us again, Woody.
Thanks for having me, man.
So for those who don't know, it's Woody Woodburn from Rockwell, Ontario, which sounds like a ChatGPT generated rock star when you
It's
really come down.
Rockwood.
Rockwood.
Yep. Everyone calls it something different.
Yeah, yeah, fair. So where is that in relation to like other major metropolises in the that area?
We're about 10 minutes east of Guelph.
Okay,
But Toronto would be, depending on the day, an hour and a half, could be 2 hours, 2.5 hours, depending on traffic. So,
fair, yeah.
um, yeah. I grew up just outside of Toronto, in Mississauga, which is considered the GTA.
Yeah, yeah, that area through my corporate career I've spent some time in, but a
Sure, yeah.
lot of hotels, highways and eating at the keg probably, not
Yeah. I avoid it like the plague. I just too much traffic and
yeah.
too many people. I did a gig in Toronto on Tuesday, I think it was. It was a legendary bar, so I was happy to do it, but parking and traffic, it's just a nightmare. And
Yeah.
I got there with more than enough time, but by the time I parked and get in there, it was 10 minutes before I went on.
Oh
So
yeah, I could imagine. There's
stressful.
you know what it's like down here on the East Coast. You travel quite a wide distance in the same amount of time, but even then,
Yeah,
sometimes it's pretty tight if you try to book too much in a short time frame.
for sure. Yeah.
So, one thing I always enjoyed about you, in contrast to some of the other artists that I've had on too, and I have also been guilty of dipping outside of East Coast quite frequently. For anyone that's been watching all my episodes, but we're still with the primary focus on the East Coast. Most of my guests are down here in this region, trying to find opportunities to get up into your region. And you kind of have the opposite thing going on.
For
You
sure.
definitely have a lot of traction down here. And I think if I were to go back to the last time that we spoke, like on air, because like I've met you in person and talked a couple times online, but when we did the original episode of East Coast DNA featuring Woody Woodburn, we talked about how you made the transition into full-time musician back in like 2019. So you definitely are living the lifestyle. All the people I know that are full-time musicians down here are the same as you. It's constant gigging,
Oh yeah.
lots of touring. So I do see that you've been very, very active, but excited to also see that you're keeping in touch with your East Coast fans, and you actually have some dates that are coming up.
Yeah. Um, August 4th, Friday, is the first one. That's probably the most important one of the trip. I'm hosting a songwriter circle at the Red Barn in Sydney, which I've never been to. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I hear a lot of good things about it. Um,
Mhm.
Kicking off April, probably have a few episodes like this that'll be out there for people to watch, but I imagine behind the scenes, I'm going to be starting to divert my attention to getting ready to head over to ECMAs. So I do know that you'll be here for a couple weeks in April.
Yep.
Then you're heading back up to Ontario from there to continue the tour.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. Yeah. I'll have two trips to the East Coast. Um, that's pretty much the only place I tour. It's
Yeah,
East Coast or Ontario. And it's funny how you mentioned a lot of the East Coast artists are focusing on Ontario. There was a songwriter in Nova Scotia that I was trying to connect with to do a show with, and she was like, "You know what, Woody? I'm focusing on Ontario right now," and I'm like, "It's just crazy. Like to me, like I just can't wait to get east." But I guess it's just most people think there's more opportunity up here and stuff.
yeah,
But to me, it's just more flooded with us. There's more of us here.
Hmm.
You know, and I love the connection you guys all have with your ECMAs and all the different award shows that you have out there. And I have more of a connection to Nova Scotia than I do the Ontario music scene. It's tough not to crack.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I definitely know the roots that you have here, besides having spoken to you, like the people that know you have only ever said good things. And
awesome.
I've been out to see you perform as well. So, I mean, I know where that comes from. But I am curious a little bit. We don't have to spend too much time on it. As you mentioned, our region does have a lot of music industry associations, which structurally, I mean, given the name of the show, where it's the East Coast DNA, East Coast is a wide region and it's a lot of the provinces. So it's funny that we do tend to refer to the region as East Coast or Atlantic provinces or the Maritimes, or there's always like a big name for a larger section than just referring to one province.
Sure.
But then when it comes down to support, which this is a great thing, but when it comes down to support, we do have one for each of the individual provinces. And then we
Right.
have the East Coast Music Association overall. But as I mentioned, where I've started to interview some people from some of the regions outside of the East Coast, I do notice that the structure changes once you leave our side of the country when you start to get into Quebec, Ontario. And I am aware that there is something similar out west where there's some type of West Coast association. I don't know a lot about them. But
Mhm.
in the Ontario province itself, being that that's where you're from, does it rely more on things like Canada Music Week, or is there smaller music industry associations for the smaller regions inside of Ontario, or is there a
Yeah,
provincial?
there is. So I've only been to one like music conference, to be honest, in Ontario, and it's Folk Music Ontario, which they've now renamed the organization Folk Canada, which means a little bigger pool.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, they still do call the conference for now Folk Music Ontario. Now, I have been there. Very difficult to get any kind of showcasing there, and so it was a great experience. But it's really hard to crack that nut. Like, there's so many of us, and so many of us that have been doing the folk music Ontario things for many years, where I've just gotten into it
yeah.
myself. Um, so yeah, it's difficult. Like when I see, congrats on the nomination, by the way,
No, thank
yourself.
you.
And like friends of mine in the East Coast are getting nominated and they're getting showcases, and it's like I just want that here, and I'll keep trying. Like I don't get down too much, but it's just a bigger fish to fry here, I find.
Yeah, we definitely. I mean, anyone that Googles it or follows anything knows that it's kind of a rocky time with some of it down here, but
Yeah,
it
I
definitely
believe that.
the spirit is still very alive down here of support, and kind of the mutual goal of lifting each other up is still here. I can definitely feel it in the fan base because a lot of the people that I interact with when I go to shows in our region are not even necessarily fans of my show that listen along. They are supporters of music in the region. So, like, they are the people that keep those things going. So, regardless of where things go in the next year or so, I suspect that we're just going to see the pendulum kind of swing and we'll be back into a more positive zone pretty soon.
Hope
And
so.
I, like yourself, I'm very excited to see not just peers out there, because I do know some of the other media people that are also up for nominations this year, which congratulations to all of them if I haven't spoken to them already individually. But the musicians that I've known over the last couple of years and watching them develop their careers the last couple of years and seeing that recognition is a big thing. So That's I can definitely see where we are kind of shining a little bit of a light that would be appetizing to artists from outside of our region.
Oh yeah, for sure.
How does your career kind of for a trajectory, like I said, where I know that you have a lot of traction here in the East Coast, and I do see that you're performing a lot in Ontario as well, which makes sense because that's your backyard. But what
Hmm.
about the opposite side of the country? Have you had any attempts to go west?
I did have one attempt, I would say, only because I had a friend that moved out there,
Hmm.
and then he had made the decision to come back. So he asked me to fly out and spend some time with him and do the drive back. So I'm like, perfect opportunity um, to try and make something happen. I had three gigs booked in the Calgary and Edmonton area, and then I tried to get gigs between here and there for the drive back, and nothing. I couldn't get anything between here and there. And then long story short, the trip for a number of reasons just fell apart, and
Hmm.
it's just so it's such a like I think you know Cape Breton takes me 21 hours to get to, and I think it's like over 3 days to drive out west, right?
Yeah,
So
okay.
it's a big difference, and if you're not playing shows along the way, it's to me it's next to impossible, right? So I'd be losing a lot of money. It'd be a great experience, but it would cost me a lot to get out there. Now, that being said, this year, for the first time, I applied to every festival I could find in the country. So I guess that would be considered an attempt, but none of those have come through as of yet. But other than that, I don't really think about it too much to go west. East is so easy for me. I'm there once a year anyways,
Hmm.
and I do own a place in Inverness, Cape Breton, and so it's just so easy for me. And I have family near Halifax. I have family near in Sydney, and there's family everywhere to go see, right? So it's just so much easier to go east.
The Inverness Beach was just, I was just talking with my mom. Hi, mom. I don't think she's
Mhm.
actually listening, but hi anyway. I was just talking to her, it must have been earlier today, about a recent review, like a tourism type article about Nova Scotia and beaches. 'Cause we're getting close to some summer teased weather, and Inverness was the top beach of the region. So
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know
I
many others. I hear Port Hood is um, high on the list too.
that was in the top five. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mel Murby's the local one here in Pector County.
Okay.
That's where I kind of grew up. So I've definitely, as a big fan of being on the East Coast and sticking around my whole life, that's my home stomping ground right there. So the
Uh-huh.
Inverness one I hear a lot about. I'm gonna have to get up there. I hear it's huge for beach glass. So you
It
might
is,
run
yeah.
into me sometime.
But there's almost sometimes there's too many beach glass pickers, and it's
Yeah.
all picked over. So you get that too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that happens here locally. So when I was following along and seeing all your dates and stuff as well, I think you had a new single out in the last, it's definitely in the last 2 months, but it's probably more recent than that. I've done a lot in the last little bit, so time seems to be it's not calculating properly in my brain anymore. I don't know if it's weeks or days or anything, but you had a fairly recent single out as well.
You're close. It was October 26th.
Oh wow, okay, so it was a
Yeah,
while ago. Yeah.
time's flying. It feels like yesterday to me too, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, and it was released in collaboration with a brewery out here that I play monthly, Caledon Hills Brewery. It's become my favorite brewery now, and they made a really good beer named after the song. Now I'm on the can, which is pretty cool, and they sold out, so it's done well. I think they're going to make some more in the fall. Um, but that's a pretty cool collaboration for me, and yeah, the song's called "Leave Your Light On," and we have a few more in the works as well. Just trying to find the time to record them.
So if you do another beer, do you think it'll be another Leave the Light On beer or it will be a different one maybe?
Good question. and they posed that question to me. They kind of left it up to me what I would want
Sure.
to do. Maybe down the road another song, but this song and the beer has done so well. I kind of don't want to lose it, you know.
Yeah,
If there's new people that are fans of the beer that actually connect to my music, um, one maybe one more batch of that beer, and then maybe look at a new one in the future.
yeah.
Pretty cool collaboration.
If you end up doing another run of them, you'll have to let me know because I'll have to add one. I don't. I've talked about it a few times on the show. I don't drink a lot. I'm not 100% sober. I'll have a social drink, but I just don't very often.
Yeah,
But one thing I can see it from where I'm sitting right now. There's like at least half a dozen tall boys on one side of my room, and probably another half dozen on the other side of the room. But they're all music related.
amazing. Yeah.
So I have almost full collection of the ECM males. The last one will be coming out from Kitty Vitty this year. So there'll be more about that on East Coast DNA in the very near future. But Andre Petitpas, who you know as well,
Yeah.
he's had a couple different beer collaborations now. So I have a few of his
Amazing.
cans laying around as well. So
Cool.
like to add yours to the collection if at all possible in the future.
I thought I'd be going down with a couple two fours this trip, and so I found out they ran out. The owner has 12 saved for me.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so I'll bring some down. I know there's a few people that would love to
Oh, I'm
have
sure
one.
there is. I'm sure there
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So, what are your plans like? Like, obviously, you are planning ahead where you've been applying for festivals because I know a little bit on the back end. That's a very long game. You can be applying like a year or two ahead in some cases. So,
Mhm.
between that and your very hectic schedule of touring, because I see you would constantly have gigs.
Yeah.
So, what type of plans do you have for the rest of 2025? It's almost time for new singles leading to like a new album or something.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a good timeline on that. It's hard to put a timeline on releasing music.
Hmm.
Um, um, because I have a trio that I'm working with now, and we've just added a fourth member. And so now getting those people up to speed can take time. We got a couple of um, bigger gigs coming up this summer. So it's like, and we only get together once a week. We
Yeah.
all have day jobs. So, it's trying to prioritize time. And I'd love to say I would have a six-song EP in the fall or by the end of the year. Um, it's hard to put that kind of timeline, but definitely that would be the plan. Um,
Hmm.
I don't like that I have one single out in October and now I'm counting that kind of. I feel like I'm in no man's land. I know I was talking to Steve McIntyre, your friend, and I think he still has an album's worth of recordings
Oh yeah.
sitting because he's so busy.
Yeah.
And I wish I had that luxury too, right? Just to have them sitting and waiting. But so yeah, I mean, I'd love to say an EP by the end of the year. Definitely another single in the next couple of months. We're not. That one's just about finished recording. Um, but this process of one at a time is new to me.
Yeah.
But that's the way we're supposed to do it now, and it's
It's hard on the other end as well, like
yeah.
receiving content, but I find with my time skew from just doing this all the time, I do tend to just be like, oh yeah, they have new material out because I just know that you have, like we just did here. I know that you have a new single out that you're actively promoting,
Yeah,
and I know that there will be new material,
yeah.
but I don't necessarily expect an album every time until there's been at least a couple singles out. But
So,
you mentioned working with it's becoming a full band, not just a trio, if you have the fourth member being added in there as well.
mhm.
So I'm curious, like you already mentioned, like kind of bringing them up to speed. and where you're the central songwriter for this material because it's your solo act.
Mhm.
When you do get ready to do that type of thing, like you have a lot of songs obviously to pull from, and you definitely, where you're out there all the time, I can tell that you're the type of musician that you'll be writing more songs as time goes along too. You're not just gonna
Yeah.
sit on it. So, do you prefer in this type of instance, would you prefer to kind of just wait and see where it organically goes, where you're playing with some new musicians to see if maybe something new is birthed out of that, or there's new kind of variation of an old song that maybe you were just playing by yourself for the last couple of years?
Um, I don't think too much about those types of things. There
Mm-hmm.
is a couple of songs that um, uh, from my two EPs. I have two EPs as a solo artist, and there is two songs off the latest EP that I don't typically play because, as you know, I'm typically solo. And even with the trio, I've been playing with the trio a little bit. We haven't played those two new songs. Now the new guy, the fourth, is like, we got to play those songs. Uh, so it's cool. So yes, as you say, organically, yeah, I do kind of feel off of them too. Like if they're excited to play a song, then that gets me more excited to play a
Mm-hmm.
song. I'm not the type of band leader to just tell them what to do all the time. I like them to be involved as well. So yeah, I would say it does happen organically, but a lot of like some of these gigs that we have coming up, they're like 3 hour shows. So we're playing all of the originals, but we all also have to throw in covers. So it can be a lot of work to get up to speed.
Yeah, I could imagine. And now the other players, are they all from in and around your Ontario home base?
Yep, they're in Kitchener, which is about 40 to 50 minutes, depending where you're at in Kitchener. So Kitchener, Cambridge,
Hmm.
call the same to me out there.
Yeah. So logistically, it makes sense that if you're bringing them out for performances, that they're probably mostly the Ontario ones. Is there any plans to bring
100%.
them? Are you going to maybe bring them east in future dates this year, or it remains to be seen kind of thing?
It all depends on the shows. Like the budget would have to be there. Like,
Sure.
you know, I'm just getting by with myself going, right? So,
Hmm.
and then, accommodations comes into play and um I love the idea, but it just all depends on where my rear goes out there, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that 100% makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you kind of say yourself there too. I do realize that it can be a struggle as far as, well, even on my own, like right now, I'm sitting in front of a Zoom call, which can be relatively cheap, but you can see that there's gear attached here. And when I travel, there's gas, there's hotels. I understand it's things add up really quick, and there's not necessarily everything you do doesn't necessarily give you enough return that it's actually covering everything. So it can be a little bit
Mhm.
of a struggle. But
Yeah.
that all said, it's been going on 6 years that you've
Mhm.
been a full-time musician now. So do you yourself have any maybe tips or words of wisdom for some of the people out there that are maybe a little earlier in their careers and looking at people like yourself and saying, I wish I could make the transition to full-time musician?
Hmm. Um, the best thing, the best advice I can offer is the mindset piece. I wouldn't have done this without my wife, and she pushed me to do it. But when we went into it, we're like, we're not going to think about the money or the lack thereof. And I said right from the start, I'm never going to consider myself a struggling artist. So I could easily say I'm a struggling artist, but um, I just work to not use those words. I'm just grateful to be able to do it, and the money just. I don't know if this is great advice, but the money just kind of happens when you don't think about it. You
Hmm.
know, I charge my worth where I can, and sometimes I'm playing. Last week I did 8 gigs, and they all may not pay as much as I would like them to do, um, but it's just the mindset piece. Like, just I go into every show thinking one person is one person is going to be affected by what I'm doing tonight.
Yeah.
And so back when, 10, 20 years ago, I would go in thinking, I don't think anyone wants to hear what we're doing. We're just playing for ourselves for fun, right? Um, but now with the mindset that somebody is going to be affected by what I'm doing tonight, um, I think my songs are presented in a better light.
Yeah.
Just my demeanor or the way they're coming across, and I'm more concerned about connection with people rather than I kind of had this thing where we all have this thing where we're not good enough
Hmm.
and or imposter syndrome, and now I don't think about being good anymore. Like, I'm obviously doing something right if I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
So I think more about the connection than being good. Uh, that's the best advice I could come up with, for people. Like, I also don't want to be in a position where I'm telling someone to go full time and then
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't work out, right? And so, yeah, I think it's the mindset is the huge thing. Like, when I was going through that transition, I had a spiritual advisor, and he kind of pushed me in this direction. And I've had therapists in the past too, so it's a lot of mental stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I've noticed that with a lot of the younger artists that are making a go of it right off the bat, which is its own unique challenge.
yeah,
I'm sure a lot of people that I'm talking to that are now full-time musicians made an attempt at that at one point as well. But I do
sure,
find a lot of the younger ones that they have a deep focus on mental health. So, I mean, without saying any specific people, I mean, the people that have talked to me, we've recorded, put it on air, people can figure it out. But I do think that part of that kind of rings true with everyone that if you do really pull back the layers and have someone, whether it's a partner or a therapist or whoever that you go to kind of seek advice or even just to bounce ideas off in some manner, I think when you're talking about something like that, it's the passion that you have for it yourself that's coming out, and that's what they're reflecting back to you is that like obviously this is where your heart's at, so that's what's going to make you happy. Like obviously I can't lay on Melmerby Beach all day, I have to do something else.
for sure.
But similar to many of the musicians I interview, like outside of my corporate career, I always had my fingers in something to do with helping promote music in some way. So in some ways people around me kind of feel like it seemed like I was always going to inevitably end up doing something like this on my end. So I
Yeah.
think that's why I like to hear stories from people like yourself where you've made that transition into full time. You're kind of a little bit of a role model to me in a way as well, where I would like to at some point be able to make some type of transition into doing what I like to do full time as well. So
Mhm.
definitely thank you, and any other artists that I interviewed that have similar stories. Thank you for that inspiration. For anyone that wants to follow you online and kind of follow what's going on, especially anyone that's on the East Coast that might not get a chance to see you on a regular basis when you're in Ontario, where would you recommend that they follow you online? I know you have a website. Do you have a newsletter with that, or
I haven't come up with a newsletter portion, no, but I do have a website, woodywoodburn.ca. All my shows are there. There's music and
perfect?
videos. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, pretty easy to find.
Amazing.
I don't think
So
I don't think there's not many Woody Woodburns out there.
Yeah, I know you're definitely. I have made commentary on that for a few people because there's a few, especially band names. There's a
Sure.
few interesting band names these days that are very hard to find online because they're generic words.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you have a nice solid name to search, and it's like, oh yeah, that's who I'm looking for. There is another Woody Woodburn out there that's not a musician though, but
He's a writer, I believe.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you just gotta put the all important word in there as Canadian, and then
There you go.
you get the right guy every time.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, I'm not sure where the other Woody Woodburn is, but yeah.
Maybe you'll run into him someday.
Yeah.
Do a co-write.
Yeah, that'd be funny. Yeah. That'd be cool.
So I definitely want to thank you for reaching out before you took a trip down this way, but definitely stay in touch as well. Um,
Well, for
for
sure.
everyone out there that's new to Woody, make sure that you go out there and follow him on your own social media platforms of your own preference. But the website that we mentioned as well, I do go back into that website there every once in a while and check out tour dates and kind of get a little beat on where you
Cool.
are in the country. So I know that you keep that up to date. So recommend that people do that as well. And if I get an opportunity, like I said, I have quite a hectic few weeks in front of me here too. But if I get an opportunity, I'll reach out if I'm going to be near any of your shows.
I'm playing in your town.
Oh,
Are you
perfect.
away? April 7 and 10?
I may actually be here. I'll have to check the
I'm
calendar as soon as I get off.
I'm at Shoebox on
Amazing.
Monday, the 7th. And what's the other one? The Thistle
Yes.
Pub
Yeah. Yes. Just across town.
on the 10th.
There you go. So I'm going to have follow-up questions for you when we get off air because I know the proximity of them and it leads to some follow-up questions you might not want to answer on air yet. So
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah,
But
let's
tickets, if you don't mind me mentioning,
yeah,
for the
yeah,
April
absolutely.
4, the April 4 show. That's with Jordan Musician and Bethany June
Hmm.
at the Red Farm in Sydney, red-farm.ca. Tickets are there. They're available for $20 in advance, 25 at the door. They have hotel rooms now there too.
Yeah, I saw you put that in your head. That's amazing. It's especially for people like myself that's like, well, Sydney, but I mean, I definitely would be worth the trip.
For sure, yeah.
So I'll look for those local Pictou County dates as well, and I'm sure anyone following along East Coast DNA, that's not the last time you're going to hear me mention it if you're following along my social medias. So I'll see you very soon then, Woody.
Sounds good, man.
And for anyone that's new to you, is there a song that you'd like to play off with today to give them a sample?
Might as well go with the new one. Leave the light on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And when we listen to that, I'm going to sit here and pretend I have one of those beers so go along with it. So,
Sounds good.
all right. Thanks again, and we'll talk very soon.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
I'd like to pick your brain about the words you say. You take the Lord's name in vain, and all the games you play. Never thought I'd see the day you'd wanna look at me that way. Try to keep that tone at bay, and I hope that you are here to stay. Leave the light on, 'cause I'm always coming home to you. Believe that I won, 'cause I'll never be alone with you. I'd like to pick your brain about the plans we made, so that it was what they say, whether in the sun or the rain. Never thought I'd see the day you'd wanna look at me that way. Trying to keep that tone at bay, that you are here to stay. Leave the night on, 'cause I'm always coming home to you. Leave the night on, 'cause I've never been alone with you. Leave the light on, 'cause I'm always coming home to you. Leave the night on, 'cause I'll never be